the intersection of manufacturing and digital transformation. Today's guest is Richard Phillips, Director of Smart Manufacturing with Polytron, and we will talk about the topic of MES in the manufacturing industry. Hi, Richard, and thanks for being a guest in our podcast. To start this thing off, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Marcus. Thank you for inviting us to this podcast. Looking forward to it. So a little bit about myself. I've been working in automation and MES for over 30 years. Graduated as electrical engineer, did a bachelor's and a master's. I was excited about sort of the automation world in manufacturing, being able to implement solutions and technologies where you could actually see the benefit of it immediately. And then as I did a lot of projects in automation, grew up into more the data side, and that's the focus on the smart manufacturing and MES.
And tell us a little bit more about Polytron, the company you worked for. Also, you're not a newbie there. You're quite some time at Polytron, and I guess you started there and transformed from there in your current position.
Sure. Yeah, so I've been at Polytron actually a little over 30 years, which is a long time, but one of the things with the business we're in, had the opportunity to work with numerous manufacturers, both large and small, in all sorts of different projects. But Polytron's been in business for just over 40 years. I think we celebrated our 40th year last year. They've received several awards, System Integrator of the Year, a couple of times. They're CSI certified. We just received a Top Workplace award from the AJC last year. So overall, it's a great environment in terms of the people who work there. They all collaborate, work together to solve our customers' challenges and projects. And like I mentioned, grew up doing automation. And then from automation, we have other services that serve basically our manufacturing clients. So things like machine safety, turnkey projects to do packaging and process complete installations. We get into a lot of different stuff. So myself and our group, we're focused on the smart manufacturing piece. And again, that's the agile Industry 4.0 technologies plus the traditional MES solutions.
And as you brought up that shortcut MES, or that acronym MES, in your point of view, what is an MES and what does an MES provide, just from a general description?
Sure. So ISA, I guess, first defined where MES fits. They have a triangle that shows level 0 is on the production floor. So this is the sensors and everything that is the eyes and ears of the manufacturing plant floor. Then level 1 is the PLC. So the PLC is the industry computer that basically takes all those sensors, and then it turns on motors, turns off motors, opens valves, and so forth. And then the SCADA part is really the interface, so the HMI, the computer screen for you to be able to interact with everything. Then MES is the next layer. So the MES is the Manufacturing Execution Systems, also called Manufacturing Operations Management. And then what that's doing is it's taking all of this data and then providing insights so that manufacturers can improve their operations. So it's things like performance. So performance is, if my line's supposed to run at 100 parts a minute and it's running at 50, why is it running at 50? And how do I use data to make those improvements? And that's one of the typical cases of MES, but it includes a lot of other stuff like quality, scheduling, inventory, and so forth. And then the top layer is what's called ERP, which is the Enterprise Resource Planning, which is the business systems. So it's finance, HR, production orders coming in, and so forth. So MES serves as the handshake, and then it provides the insights to the manufacturing systems to determine improvements in all those areas that I mentioned and more.
Yeah, that's a great summary. Also kind of helps to differentiate between SCADA and MES, where a lot of people kind of have a blurred view or mix the two terms and think about a MES when they meant SCADA or the other way around.
Absolutely.
And in your point of view, what is the core benefit of having an MES? As I see still manufacturing operations out there which have actually just a SCADA system and then somehow an ERP system which manages all the business side of things.
Yeah, so that's a great question. We work with manufacturers small and large. So the large manufacturers are going to have this architecture a little bit more defined. They understand what ERP, MES, and SCADA and all those things are. The ISA standard keeps you in check. It keeps you out of trouble so that you don't do things like your ERP is turning on a motor, to provide a drastic example. But the smaller manufacturers, they don't really care about MES or SCADA or any of that. They have problems that need to be solved. And us as an integrator, we leverage this architecture to help them solve their problems without really spending too much time talking on, well, where does it fall in MES or SCADA or so forth. So in the background, we help architect that and then help communicate that to our customers. But our customers typically approach us with, my line's supposed to run, using my previous example, at 100 parts a minute, and it runs at 50. Manufacturing is so complex, we can't really tell where these losses are. Are there any systems that could provide us insights to be able to make those improvements? The same with quality, scheduling, inventory, where you're not tracking it correctly, traceability. There's also sorts of issues within that data level that customers are looking to solve and improve.
Which then brings us to the whole topic of value proposition. As you mentioned already, a couple of issues: productivity, quality, operational visibility as key metrics which can be analyzed/visualized by the MES just by looking at the existing data from the production shop floor. Do you have a specific example you can share where through a key metric like this you showed a customer success?
Absolutely. So one of the things we do as an integrator, with all of our experience in this industry, working for a lot of different manufacturers, a lot of different technologies, a lot of different approaches, we've come to really fine tune what are the best practices on how to go about doing this. And then what are the solutions that we want to focus on first, and then what technologies make the most sense. So to answer your question, using that best practices approach, we help manufacturers, number one, is identify what area is going to provide this highest return on investment. Because if we can do that on the first phase of the first project and show that to the business, then naturally the subsequent phases where they're improving the other areas that have less of an ROI become also attainable. So using this approach, we're able to identify which ones of these solutions makes the most sense. Typically, it's performance management, where they're looking to increase, right? The example I mentioned, where if a line's not running at par, how do you get information, data, and be able to improve that? We have one customer, for example, they're a small manufacturer, they're a family-owned company, and they were looking at building their second plant, right? And the second plant was going to cost $60 million. But what they figured is they thought they were running at a certain OEE or operational. The OEE is the throughput compared to the line design throughput, right? So again, if you're running at 100, if your line's supposed to run at 100 parts a minute and you're running at 50, your OEE is 50%. So leveraging the solution that we implemented, and we identified that as being their biggest opportunity right off the bat, they were basically able, within 3 to 6 months, improve their OEE from 51% to 79%, which is a tremendous improvement. And if you think about it, it represents 55% more production from that facility. So if you do the math on those metrics and you have an existing facility where you simply just optimized it and got 55% more production out, and building a new facility costs $60 million, that math translates to a significant return on investment by simply leveraging data to understand what things to improve, making those improvements, measuring it again to verify you improved it, and then sort of continuing that continuous improvement methodology.
That's actually a great example where data can be used to actually save money. When implementing systems, and it doesn't really matter what you change, because it's always part of change management, there are also challenges what manufacturers face when they implement systems. Particularly when implementing an MES system, what are the challenges, what manufacturing face in your point of view with your implementation experience?
Excellent. Yeah, that's another great question. So the MES or smart manufacturing space, it's very interesting because there's several surveys out there from management consulting companies that 80% of these initial projects or pilots are not successful and don't move on to the next phase. What we have come to determine over, doing MES for about 20 years or so is that happens because of a combination of things. Number one, there's probably two big components. Number one is best practices. And then number two is selecting the best technology that allows you not only to meet your short-term goals, but gives you a platform for you to grow into and continue to expand and implement some of these other solutions using the same platform without having to go buy a different software every time you're trying to solve a problem. And then you end up with all these data silos that you have to integrate and so on and so forth. So within the best practices, there's a lot to dive into there, but those are probably the two biggest components.
And from the best practice point of view, what are specific points you can highlight there? Just as an example for a specific challenge there.
We've actually done a workshop a couple of years ago at several conferences. It was a 3-hour workshop and literally just talking about the best practices and examples of each. I think customers found it very valuable because some of those things sound intuitive, but if you don't keep it in front of you, it's easy to miss. So the first thing is business drivers, right? So we're trying to help the business solve a business problem and not necessarily implement a cool technology as another example of what is not a business driver. Business drivers are sustainable. People get excited about it. The business sees the value and therefore wants to do more. The second one is requirements and stakeholder alignment. Very, very important because we're implementing a technology and there's users on the plant floor and the people running the plant. It's very important that they are heard and that they are on board with the solution developed and what's going to be implemented, and that we understand what their specific requirements are based on how they're currently operating and what the gaps are. And then just to touch on two others real quick, the next one is what we call sort of the three-legged step stool, which is people, processes, and technologies.
I just wanted to point that out as well as people, process, technology. They have to be all aligned. And if one of the legs of the stool in this 3-leg stool is not working, the whole thing is not working.
Absolutely. And that one is so critical. And we have some good examples there. So we're going to be implementing the technology, right? The people on the plant floor have to be on board that that's going to help them do their job better. And they have to change their processes to leverage the technology. So some of the issues we run into the past is if the operators, for example, are compensated based on OEE, their bonus is paid based on that. And we come in with a technology solution that says, hey, you're not running at 75%. And this is a real example we've got into. You're actually running at 50%. And then the operators immediately don't like that. So if the business doesn't do something about it and explain that, hey, we can actually continue to pay your bonus at what you're doing now, but let's go ahead and get us to that 75, 80%, because that ROI or that return on investment is so significant that, if you do that and you get everybody on board, then everybody's moving towards the same direction. If you don't, then the operators will say the system stinks, it doesn't work, which is exactly what they said until that was addressed. And the other one is changing the processes. So if you're providing them with data to make improvements, but they continue to look at their clipboard where they're taking notes on paper, they're not leveraging. It's like you bought a new iPhone, but you're not really using it to its full capacity.
I fully agree. And I have that example from my experience when operators or people on the shop floor just have that fear that this new technology, this new digital thing somehow takes their job away, and that can start with rumors, which may not even be correct. Then they immediately kind of say, no, we don't want to do that, even sabotage the whole idea.
Absolutely.
And then the whole implementation gets into a nightmare.
Absolutely.
And most likely fails.
Yep, no doubt.
To my understanding, you guys also provide kind of like a consultant service where you kind of evaluate where a manufacturer is on their journey to really then define a roadmap in what needs to be done step by step. As, for example, the implementation of an MES system might be a good goal, but if you're not ready with it yet, you have to do your homework first in order to get there. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure, absolutely. So, just looking at our history real quick, we were what I called 10, 20 years ago, a trusted implementer. So large Fortune 500 manufacturers would trust us to implement solutions developed. As we gained more and more experience, we started helping develop the solution, started helping select the technology stack. And where we are now is that our biggest value to our customers is really that front-end digital transformation partner where we're helping influence what technology should you select, following the best practices, and then following this, that number one business driver I mentioned, selecting which projects to do first, second, third, and fourth, and so forth, because it is a journey, and showing that value to the business in selecting the right projects first, using the best practices, and using the right technology. So that is part of the front end that we help manufacturers do, is going through that exercise to sort of lay out that roadmap for their initial implementation. And of course, you go back and revisit the roadmap to see what makes sense. But our success rate has really jumped up significantly since we're able to influence our customers and partner with them at that level so that we can make sure some of those gotchas that we know have caused projects to fail in the past, that we're avoiding those and focusing on these best practices.
Talking back to the MES about scalability and flexibility, you mentioned earlier when recommend a solution, you focus on a solution where you can kind of start as a base and then over time be able to scale it and adapt it. Can you dive a little bit further on that and give examples on that?
Sure. The fourth best practice that we have in our little roadmap of best practices, this is the technology stack selection, and selecting technology stack to support short term. The short term is the immediate need, right? I want to increase OEE. But then also a long-term vision, because when customers select that, they're really partnering with that software OEM. And you want a software OEM who is agile. There's a lot of other things that go into selecting the right platform, but then also will be growing with you, right? So AI is here now. Is that software vendor going to be the best at implementing AI into their solution stack? So as an example. But historically, MES really has not had a great name because a lot of the initial solutions were a combination of maybe different purchase companies, and they didn't work that well. They weren't very agile. It was really a big bang implementation, right? So it's give me all this money. I need 2 years, and then we're going to roll it all out. And of course, that never goes well because the adoption in itself is an issue, but also the technology implementation was not good. The newer version of that, and that's what we call the Agile MES. So smart manufacturing for us is the Industry 4.0 technologies. Now we got AI and the Agile MES implementation. So this is more modern platforms that are built from the ground up that allow you to do that first thing, the biggest ROI item first. So I just want to implement performance management or quality or traceability or paperless. And I just want to do that. And I want to give it to my team and I want them to start using it. As they start using it, they're going to go, oh, hey, I get it. I now understand all these other things that the tool can do. And they start asking for all those items. So this journey where you're in an agile implementation format, giving them new functionality so they can start using it, seeing the benefits, providing feedback, and then continuing down the journey is really what has been transformational for MES implementations compared to that big bang, approach that we had maybe 20 years ago.
Thank you for that. From a customer success story standpoint, can you share a few case studies or use cases where you guys really helped with an implementation and made a significant impact to your client, the manufacturers?
Sure. So I'll just talk about another one of our small customers. And I like talking about small customers because, for so long, we only really worked with Fortune 500 manufacturers. Mm-hmm. And these smaller manufacturers were honestly just underserved and nobody really paid attention to them because the solutions weren't as cost effective. And that's totally not true now, right? The solutions, if you follow the methodology and you pick the right one and implement it correctly, literally any manufacturer can afford these type of solutions. So one of them is a customer of ours out in California who manufactures filters. And a long story short is they were using barcodes. So they did these very large reverse osmosis filters that go to wastewater treatment plants. And they would have to shut down every 6 months to do inventory, just to reconcile the inventory with their ERP system. They decided to transition from barcodes to RFID tags. So we implemented that with them with an MES system. So MES is not just always a software. MES also can connect to, in this case, RFID readers, and in other cases, other hardware and software and so forth to provide a complete solution. So on the RFID screens, we basically implemented the MES HTML5 page. So after we put the system in, they were able to scan the entire lot instead of it taking 2 days where they had to shut down the plant. They would basically go around, zap, 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 and within an hour or two, they read all of the tags of the inventory on the plant floor, automatically reconciled it with the ERP system, and then we provided them a report of deviations in terms of where those two didn't match. An interesting point here is, like almost all of our implementations, there are always ancillary benefits of the going digital. In this case, what they were also able to do is to add RFID readers throughout their process so that now they can measure the WIP, the work in process, at each of the stations. And instead of being blind to that, only knowing when it was completed, they now had much better visibility into the entire process, which filter was at what part. And then also that created, some traceability in terms of being able to track defects related to a specific filter. So it provides these other benefits as well, which is pretty common.
Yeah, and as it's beginning of the year where still a lot of companies do physical inventory of their parts and storage, where they shut down for a week and go with a lot of people through it and count it, most likely still on a piece of paper and making things. If you just calculate the amount of hours spent on that, and you can do it with technology, and then you get additional benefits like you got full traceability of your production workflow. Plus, even if these components are out on the field, you're easily to track them down there as well. So it opens a can of new opportunities for that business case, and that's just the wonderful thing.
It's very interesting because everybody now has a smartphone, and they understand the benefit of having a single device with all of that functionality, right? So it's no longer back in the day, right? It was a separate device for your email, a phone with text, and then you had the camera, Garmin, and you had all these devices,
and your MP3
right?
player, and
exactly.
Your navigation,
and your iPod. Yeah. So now with it all together, people working in manufacturing plants, they look at their phone and they look at the plant and they go, wait a minute, I know we can do a whole lot better. So they get the value of it, and it's just a matter of helping them through the process of implementing it. Because in their personal life, they have exposure to everything technology can do. And so many plants, interestingly enough, the larger manufacturers, obviously been in business longer, have the older plants, right? Newer manufacturers are implementing the latest technologies when they build a plant. But there's so many plants out there that still have a lot of paper on the plant floor. And to your point, transitioning from paper to paperless creates incredible benefits in terms of just amount of effort to translate it to a spreadsheet, more real-time visibility, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I agree. And going back to the phone, I think that the future there is that on the shop floor, you should get the information you need at the location you are through that magic device, what everybody of us have in the pocket worldwide. There's an adaptation of almost 100%. In order to do that job, that task of what you do right and not making any mistakes. I think that's the summary and the benefit what we can do with the devices, of course, through different applications.
Right. And that ties into another piece of it is MES also smart manufacturing connects down to the data sources on the plant floor, specifically data from the PLCs. So anywhere where we can get data from a PLC instead of relying on an operator or somebody to take time to put it in, the first out fault of when a machine goes down is a perfect example, right? So this OEE solution called performance management basically is looking at what we call the first out fault on a machine that causes it to go down, that causes the line. So that's what is blamed for the line not running. Relying on an operator to try to write that down and do the timestamp in terms of when it went down and how long it went down while they're trying to get the line back up and running is such a clear example of how beneficial that can be, not just from alleviating the operator from doing that additional task, but then also the accuracy of the data in terms of making sure you attribute it to the correct fault and then making sure you attribute it to exactly how much time was allocated for that machine going down. The data collection part from the plant floor is another key component as well.
Yeah, as overall, it's easier to analyze structured data versus analyzing unstructured data. And yes, AI in general is able to analyze unstructured data, but at the end of the day, it's at least my opinion, it's garbage in, garbage out. If you feed not good quality unstructured data into an AI, it cannot really do its magic and give you the real insights what you're looking for.
Absolutely. So that touches on another point. Years ago, a lot of manufacturers implemented what we call these point solutions. So it'd be a software to do OEE and performance management, a software to do quality, a software to do inventory, and so on and so forth. And all of those, of course, were from different vendors and had a different data structure. One of the other advantages with this Agile MES platform concept I mentioned is if all of the data is structured in a similar manner for all of these functionalities, right? Performance, quality, inventory, traceability, scheduling, workforce, the list goes on, then you can see where AI is going to be able to input and process that data a lot more easily than if you had a lot of unstructured data. So we worked with a few machine learning partners the last 5-6 years. They spent most of their time trying to cleanse the data so that they could get it into their model, then actually having the model run it. So that's another big piece that customers talk about. Well, we want to implement AI, right? There's a survey we saw where it's at the top of the list for most CEOs of manufacturing companies coming into this year. Well, if you don't have the basic data collection from the plant floor and data sets that make sense, implementing AI on that data, that's sort of the cart before the horse type thing. You have to do this other part first before you get to a point where you can have AI look at your data and then do things like, hey, last 3 weeks, line 2, right, didn't run well and it had quality issues. What caused that? So if AI can look at the data, that's just one example of many contextualized information that AI is going to be able to provide and say, hey, here's your problem. You didn't even know how to ask the question, but we identified that we have bad quality or bad production, and so on and so forth when this happens. But you need those data sets in an organized, easy to digest fashion to be able to implement AI and machine learning to it.
Yeah, again, you have to do your homework first before you can jump on the AI bandwagon. And on the other hand, of course, all these different, let's say, software companies are happy to sell you their AI solution. And from their point of view, it's always the right thing. But if you haven't done your homework, it doesn't work. And therefore, the implementation fails. And so you spend a lot of money and wasted time, and you don't get results, and that's what nobody wants. That's why you should go to someone who is an expert in the field and can help you and sees, for example, the gap that something is missing, data structures, data connections, and do that first before going in the next step in the journey.
Absolutely. And that speaks to sort of where integrators come in, like Polytron, we're an independent integrator. So that means we're not really tied to any specific software vendor and so forth. Of course, our customers, if you look at PLCs and HMI, our customers have mostly, a certain brand of PLCs and HMI, so we specialize in that. But in the MES space, we actually implemented a lot of different solutions, and we deliberately said, this is clearly the one or two solutions that stand out from the rest. This is what we're going to bring to our customers. And it's a space that is very, very convoluted and confusing because PowerPoints and demos all look good. And a lot of big players with distributors and a lot of marketing, will get their message out front. But without somebody who has knowledge of the industry and is able to point our customers, going back to that digital transformation partnership model, right? Then that's where you end up with these 80% of projects that sort of don't move forward because talking to a lot of different vendors, and there's so many of them, and it becomes very confusing to try to do your due diligence on a single project selection versus doing it over the last 10 years across multiple projects multiple customers, talking to a lot of integrators, looking at a lot of different solutions. So it's a little bit, I've started calling it blue collar consulting, right? So it's the manufacturing consulting piece. We're not a management consulting company. We don't help our customers with ERP, but certainly with anything related to manufacturing, smart manufacturing, the Agile MES is where we're able to add the most value to our customers.
Yeah. That's how I see it as well. We already touched a little bit on future topics, AI and all of that. How do you see MES evolving into the next 5 to 10 years, and what will be the impact of AI and other technologies and connectivities and stuff like that? What's your view on that?
So manufacturing in general is really slow moving in terms of adopting technology, right? So if you walk into some of these plants that are 40 years old, they may have new PLCs and so forth, but a lot of the equipment tends to be what they might have put in back then, which they're getting a great return on that investment. So really it has to do with how do you leverage proven technologies into that space, right? Agile MES and the Industry 4.0 are examples. We talked about AI as well. But there are also other technologies that these MES providers are developing. Workflow is one of them. Optimizing some of those solutions like scheduling is another one. Making it more intuitive for the users, the operators to interface with the software is another big one as well. People are used to the apps on their phone, but MES doesn't look like an app on your phone. How do you get that? How to get MES to look more like an app so that people are a lot more comfortable using it on the plant floor and there's no learning curve associated with it. So we got the AI, we have the new solutions being rolled out. Everything is moving to the cloud, right? So cloud is another one. So there's a lot of changes and opportunities as these software packages develop, which again is key in selecting the right software partner, because what they have now is a demonstration of sort of the progress they've made. But you really want to think about, are they going to be my best partner 5 years from now and 10 years from now? As I start using their platform to collect data, implement these solutions we talked about, are they going to go with me to where I need to be in the next point? So that's part of that software partner selection as your MES platform as well.
Yeah, that's all good points. Yeah, thanks for sharing all your insights about that topic. I think that was also for our listeners quite interesting. The ones who want to connect with you and learn more about Polytron, what's the best way to connect with you?
Sure. Yeah, it's been a pleasure, Marcus. Thank you for providing the venue to talk about this. We're obviously as a group and a company, we're very passionate about it, specifically the part where we can help manufacturers now that we have all this knowledge and experience, help them produce better plants that are competitive here in the United States and so forth. But yes, to answer your question, you can reach me at rphillips@polytron.com. So it's RPHILLIPS. And then at Polytron is POLYTRON.com. Is probably the best way, or through our website, or reach me at LinkedIn as well. That works too.
And we will put that information down in the show notes. So you just click on it and you get connected to Richard.
Perfect. Thank you, Marcus. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.